What are we doing today?
So today, boys and girls, the lesson is when house music came to the UK. Shall I start?
Yeah.
All right. So, it was August 1987. 4 guys, all friends, all total music heads. Their names were Paul Oakenfold, Johnny Walker, Danny Rampling and Nicky Holloway. They all boarded a plane for a week-long holiday to Ibiza.
Ooh. We've all been there, haven't we?
A lot of us have been.
Yeah, we've been there, yeah.
So they've been going to Ibiza for years, but they'd never been to this one club. And on their first night, they decided to go there off a tip-off from their friend. It was called Amnesia. It was a farmhouse converted into a nightclub, and it was right in the middle of the island. And the man behind the club was a guy called Alfredo Fiorito. He's an Argentinian guy. Now, Alfredo was the only DJ in the club. The club opened at 3 a.m. and it closed at midday. And Alfredo DJ'd every night, 7 nights a week, for 6 to 7 months a year.
Alfredo was, as it was written in the scripture of 1987, mad for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely mad for it.
So 8 hours a morning DJ'd. So the guys got there and they danced under the stars all night long. They had the time of their lives, and they were blown away mostly by how Alfredo played the music. So he mixed all different types of music together. In London at the time, according to Paul Oakenfold, it was only ever one type of music, and all the clubs they had a bit of attitude, you know. This club was really loose, really free. Mm-hmm. Anyone could go there. It was old people, it was young people, it was no VIP, all races, all social backgrounds. Just everyone piled into this club, up to 7,000 people, and everyone came there to see Alfredo. And yeah, so he played kind of Kate Bush and Cyndi Lauper and George Michael, and then he'd play those next to the new house tunes that were coming out of Chicago at the time. See last week's lesson.
I remember last week's lesson very well.
Yeah, things like this. So this was a big tune for Alfredo in the late 80s. And the club was an amazing atmosphere. So there was a mirrored pyramid in the middle of the dance floor. Then around the edges there was bars and chill out areas with cushions and kind of Mediterranean and tropical plants. And it was really high walled. It was like being in a tropical garden.
Very like Annie Mac's house.
So picture that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Paul, Johnny, Danny and Nicky had the time of their lives, right? Afterwards, once the sun had risen, they went back to their villa and they stayed up all day talking and reliving their experiences in this club.
Okay.
Right? And they all stood in the pool together. This is admitted by all of them. They had this absolute cheesy moment where they stood in a circle in the pool and held hands and all listened to this song. Which is an Alfredo classic, I swear. So it's Art of Noise, Moments in Love. This is an Alfredo classic. And they all stood there and they held hands. And they were like, they basically wanted to change the world, right? They wanted to bring the music and the atmosphere that they had just experienced and were very fresh from Amnesia back to England. They wanted to have that in their hometown, their home country. So they kind of set about doing that. Danny Rampling had a radio show. He went from playing, I quote, downbeat smoochy soul songs from Atlanta to pumping Chicago house like this. Kenny Jam and Jason, this is. And he went from having very few listeners, about 10, to thousands. And then each of them started a club night inspired by Amnesia. So within 5 months of this holiday to Ibiza, 3 groundbreaking nightclubs had formed. Paul Oakenfold started a nightclub called Spectrum. Danny Rampling started a club night called Shoom. And Nicky Holloway started a club called The Trip. Paul Oakenfold said, I quote, "We had baggy trousers and we were dancing like maniacs and everyone was like, what the bleep are you lot doing?" So there you go. House music had arrived in the UK.
I love that they went out on a night out, then went back, got in the pool and was like, we should change the world, guys.
And then they
like many people would have done, but they actually did.
They actually changed
That's
culture. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, so a year later, a British man who went under the name of Guy Called Gerald made this track, Voodoo Ray. It spent 18 weeks in the chart, and that just kind of shows how much the influence of house music and those clubs, you know, spread around the UK. And yeah, so it's the late 80s. House music had officially arrived in the UK, all down to a farm in the middle of Ibiza and a DJ called Alfredo. Break time.
Should we play this?
Can we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
I
keep it
love
on.
this tune. This
Yeah.
reminds me of our house when I was little.
Of course. I think of you when I hear this song.
I love
proper.
this.
Yeah.
Love this. Well, thanks, miss.
Pleasure.